Welcome to our deep dive. So today we are exploring this deeply surreal, kind of metaphysical, and honestly just incredibly moving text called The Cartography of Unfinished Ceilings.
Yeah, it really is profound. I mean, it masquerades as this weird urban fantasy, but it's really this massive puzzle.
Right, a puzzle about memory and history.
Yeah.
And we are going to unpack the architecture of a city that technically shouldn't exist. We're going to figure out how a physical place might, try to have a conversation with its own forgotten past.
Exactly. And ultimately, we're exploring what it means to finally find the correct architectural space for human grief,
Mm.
which is just, it's a beautiful concept.
It really is. And the origins of this book are a total mystery, too. It was supposedly delivered in 31 separate envelopes to post offices in cities that have literally been erased from all post-1887 maps.
Which is just such a wild detail. It sets the tone perfectly.
Yeah, so to set the stage for you, the listener, imagine you receive a letter in the mail. It's written on heavy, textured paper addressed to you in this dark, unfamiliar ink. And it summons you to a specific coordinate.
But, and here's the catch, the moment you read the final sentence, the paper just dissolves in your hands.
Right. You can't even remember the exact phrasing of the invitation. You just have this overwhelming, undeniable feeling that you have to go. So you pack a single bag.
You travel to this city that is trapped in a state of eternal dusk. The city of Voragine.
Yeah, Voragine. And you check into a hotel where doors only appear out of blank walls when you're, like, psychologically ready to walk through them. And as you try to navigate the streets, you realize the physical maps refuse to lie flat.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand this city, we really have to look at how it treats its own geography.
That is the perfect starting point. Because the entry into Voragine's strangeness is actually quite bureaucratic. We're introduced early on to a government office called the Bureau of Irreversible Cartography.
A government office that officially does not exist, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Its sole mandate is to map places, districts, or entire towns that are in the process of disappearing from the world. And we meet the senior cartographer, Feodor Ilych Grau. And he's been doing this for a long time, right?
22 years. He's been meticulously documenting these vanishing places. He is a total master of his craft. I mean, he's never met a piece of geography he couldn't perfectly render onto paper.
Until he attempts to map a 12-block radius centered around a specific building, the Hotel Provisional.
Right. He uses all his standard tools, takes perfect mathematical measurements of the streets, but when he puts the finished map down on his drafting desk, it physically resists him.
Wait, it physically resists, like it moves.
Yeah, it curls up, it lifts off the wood and forms this tapered three-dimensional cylinder. And he presses it down, but it just springs right back up.
That's so creepy. And then there's a junior cartographer, Yannick, who looks at it and points out that while the ink lines of the streets are perfectly parallel, they suddenly possess I think he calls it a new awareness of each other.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is the philosophical weight of this. In cartography, flatness is a commitment to a single, stable truth.
Because you're saying this is the objective reality of this space.
Right. But Fyodor's map refuses to lie flat because the city itself is currently unsettled. It's in a state of active reconfiguration. The map resists because flatness means committing to one truth, and Voragine is currently existing in multiple realities at once.
Which I was trying to visualize the physics of this curling map, and I kept thinking about origami.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, like imagine you take a piece of origami paper and fold it into a highly complex 3D shape, like a crane. If you try to force that paper to lie perfectly flat on a table again, it fights you. The paper remembers the folds.
The tension springs it back.
Yeah.
It can't just be a flat piece of paper anymore.
Exactly. Forcing it to be flat is forcing it to pick just one version of reality. And we see this resistance popping up everywhere in the city. Over at the main library, a librarian named Oz notices a specific book has physically vanished from a self-organizing shelf.
Right, the miscellaneous alphanumeric swing. It didn't just get misplaced, it actually removed itself.
Yeah. And meanwhile, another librarian, Raya, is over at the Hotel Provisional. She finds a 1931 street atlas sitting on a table.
And in 1931, that hotel had a completely different name. But the ink on the page retroactively updates itself to show the current name.
Proving that the building knows its true identity, regardless of the chronological year on the spine of the book. It's so cool.
It really is. And if the spatial geography of the city is actively rebelling, it makes sense that the timeline is doing something equally strange.
Right, which introduces an entirely different layer to this puzzle. So there is a historian in the text, Petrov Finch, who has basically moved into Hotel Provisional.
He's been there for 11 months, just combing through archives.
And he discovers 17 massive historical anomalies, like events in Voragine with 2 completely incompatible, highly credible dates.
Yeah, we should clarify the scale of these. These aren't minor typos. He finds proof of a massive architectural exposition happening in both 1834 and 1891, which is impossible.
Completely impossible. But it leads Petrov Finch to develop this groundbreaking theory, because we usually think of history as a line, progressing forward, or maybe as a circle where things recur.
But he theorizes that history in Voragine is an accordion.
An accordion. It's such a weird metaphor, but it works so perfectly.
It's central to the entire narrative. Time folds. And when the bellows of the accordion compress, the distant past is brought into direct physical proximity with the present at a specific crease.
And that crease is the Hotel Provisional, which is where we meet Semiramis, the ageless shepherd who just sits at the station knitting, waiting to meet confused new arrivals.
Right. And when a new arrival named Aleksander Voss tries to describe the city, he uses the word comprehensive, which implies the city is actively trying to complete a set.
Okay, but I have to push back here for a second. Let's talk about the practical reality of this accordion fold. If the 1800s are literally touching the 1980s at this hotel, why isn't it just total chaos?
What do you mean?
Well, wouldn't people from the 1800s be crashing into modern tourists in the lobby? If time is folding together, wouldn't that cause catastrophic structural failure?
Ah, I see what you mean. But the text is very careful to distinguish between a collision and an adjacency. They aren't crashing together. They become adjacent.
Oh, adjacent, so they're just side by side.
Exactly. The fold is actually a preservation mechanism. It's a channel meant to keep a line of communication open so the city can converse with its forgotten territories.
So it doesn't just endlessly repeat its own mistakes.
Right. And those 17 anomalies Petrov Finch found, they aren't random glitches. They are 17 failed historical attempts by the city to complete this fold.
Oh, wow. That really sets the stakes. Because the events we're witnessing represent the 18th attempt.
Yes. And this time, the city is leaving nothing to chance.
It has assembled the exact right configuration of people. And this brings us back to Aleksander Voss. He's an architect who studies failing buildings, and he's the one who got that dissolving letter.
He arrives at the hotel and checks into room 7.5.
Which is literally a room squeezed between spaces. And waiting for him on his desk is the missing library book, the one called A Complete Record of Rooms That Have No Interior.
The concept of a room with no interior requires a complete shift in how we think about architecture. Because a normal room is a container, right? It points inward.
Right, you put things inside it and it holds them.
But the book describes a theoretical room on the second floor that extends you outward. It doesn't contain anything. Whatever you bring into it is immediately shared with the city's vast, forgotten outside.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I was thinking of this like a reverse black hole.
A reverse black hole. I like that.
Yeah, because Alexander brings this profound, paralyzing grief over losing his wife, Elena. In a normal room, that grief would just bounce off the walls and crush him. It would be impossibly dense.
But in the room with no interior, it diffuses into the atmosphere of the entire city.
Exactly. It makes the weight bearable by sharing it with history.
And of course, every mechanism in Voragine has a counterweight. While Alexander is dealing with this room, another guest, Adèle Okafor Saint-Exupéry, is exploring out back.
She's the writer who studies thresholds, right?
Yes. And she finds this geometrically impossible courtyard. It's filled with ancient painted figures paused mid-conversation. And she realizes the courtyard perfectly holds what the hotel room distributes. They're the exact opposites.
One of the painted figures even has its hand extended, making a point that cannot wait. It's like the city is guiding them. It's gathered this perfect configuration of 9 people to finally complete the fold.
The gathering of the 9. And the crucial piece is an archivist known simply as K. She comes down from the Bureau's 5th floor after literally decades.
And she drops a huge bombshell. She reveals her name is Katarzyna Solin. She is the original architect who designed the hotel in 1651.
Specifically to house this channel. She's been waiting centuries for this. And what this shows us, what the listener really needs to understand about healing, is that true processing doesn't mean moving on.
It doesn't mean erasing the past.
Exactly. It means finding the accurate, correct proportion for your grief by putting it in conversation with the wider world.
But the fold is almost complete, and yet it still needs one final piece. Because Alexander's grief alone wasn't enough to open the channel.
Right. It needs Voss. Alexander's sister-in-law.
Yeah.
She shares the exact same grief over losing Elena.
But she actually arrived 6 months too early, right? And the door wouldn't open for her.
Because she wasn't ready. But she returns now, and the clerk hands her a blank key that reveals itself as room 0.
So Alexander and Mara enter room 0 together, and they find this old photo of Elena and a handwritten letter from her.
Stating that she is in the city's forgotten territories. And that continuing doesn't mean moving on. It means carrying what you carry.
And then, of course, the letter dissolves into the extended space of the room, which triggers this massive architectural revelation for Alexander.
He's been obsessively sketching the floor plans, trying to make the math work, and he finally discovers a 4-foot cylindrical void running straight up the central core of the building.
It's totally hidden, open only to the sky. And Katarzyna confirms this is the spine of the channel.
It's the architectural version of the painted figure's planing hand, directing the grief up and out, saying here, through here, this way.
And once that happens, the fold completes. Which brings us to Benedict Dahl, this retired math teacher who has walked past the hotel every day for 40 years.
He is the control variable, the fixed point the city needed to prove the change actually happened.
And he finally walks in. He gets room 8. And up on the ceiling, this ancient fresco that used to show figures arguing, it shifts. It updates to show 7 figures collaborating on a map with an empty 8th chair waiting for him.
It's such a beautiful moment. And back at the Bureau, Feodor Ilych Grau returns to find his map is finally lying perfectly flat. The city has stopped tensing. It's settled into its true self.
But I have a crucial question here. Why did it take Mara coming back to fix the fold? Why wasn't Alexander's intense grief enough to open the channel on its own?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really comes down to the geometry of relation. A single perspective, no matter how deep, isn't enough to open a dialogue with history.
It's just one point on a map.
Exactly. Mara brought a different angle of the exact same loss. It took their shared, adjacent grief to complete the circuit. It proves that understanding requires multiple perspectives to achieve a true 3-dimensional reality.
That makes so much sense. So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? Because obviously we don't live in a magical city of eternal dusk where paper dissolves in your hands.
No, we don't. But we all have our own internal archives and our own temporal creases, moments where our past just crashes into our present.
Yeah, the lesson of Voragine is that you shouldn't try to pave over what you've forgotten or lost. You have to keep the channel open.
If you just try to source the map to be flat, you're denying your own complexity.
Exactly. So I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. Think about the physical spaces you occupy every single day. Your home, your office, your regular route to the store.
The architecture of your routine.
Yeah. If your own history was an accordion folding in on itself right now, what forgotten memory or unresolved grief is sitting just on the other side of your closest wall? Just waiting for you to finally walk through the door and start the conversation. Because maybe you just need to find the right room.